Hi, everyone. I hope I'm actually online. I'm very happy to welcome all of you to this webinar, Unpackaging Circular Packaging. And we have a fantastic lineup of people today to basically talk about the topic. And before we do that, I would ask, or let me start with a couple of practicalities maybe. So there are two tabs that you have. One is called Q&A and one is called chat. As the name says, the Q&A is for your questions. We will have after every presenter a short Q&A. The chat is for anything else. And I would ask all of you to type into the chat where you're joining from and what's your objective for today. Why are you joining? What is the reason you're with us today? So while you're doing that, I would again like to welcome all of you. Would like to welcome the speakers, and I'll have a couple of introductory words, and then we'll go and jump right into the presentations. I'm Michael Hanf. I'm the CEO of Taival. We're a small advisory company focused on strategy, technology, data, circular economy and sustainability, and design. And we're working basically with customers of all sizes in projects that combine these areas, but also separate in these areas. And as such, we realized a couple of years ago that very often the discussions that we were having around circular economy were either with circular economy and sustainability experts or with digital people or with business people, but very seldom all of them were in the room at the same time to actually co-create and talk about topics and ideas. So we created a platform called Digitally Circular, and the Unwrapping Circular Packaging is part of that series. And we hope to bring together experts from all of these areas to jointly co-create and co-develop ideas. So how do we come up with unwrapping circular packaging? So packaging is a topic that has been relevant already for a long period. Over many years, packaging has been increasing as e-commerce and other topics have been increasing, takeaway food, and that trend will continue. At the same time, people got more and more aware of one-way plastics and basically the need to change towards more sustainable alternatives. And the industry has basically, to a large extent, and we will hear about that later, has made that shift towards more sustainable materials, more sustainable alternatives. Now, COVID-19 happened, which we are all aware of, and that has changed the need in the packaging space towards more hygiene driven, more safety concerns, and that has naturally taken away a little bit from that trend towards sustainability, as it has basically taken that topic from the #1 spot. But still, for consumers as well as for companies in the industry, it has been a topic that has been on top of the agenda. And that's why I'm so happy that we have a very broad spectrum of speakers today that can talk from very different perspectives about that need, as there will be a need for us after the pandemic to come back and balance the need for sustainable solutions and the need for heightened hygiene, increased e-commerce, and so on and so forth. Preparing for the session today, I found this graph, and I think this is a very interesting graph, because very often when we talk about packaging, it's a discussion about being completely environmental friendly or not being environmentally friendly, or one or the other. And this graph for me shows very clearly that there needs to be a balance. And it's not about avoiding packaging altogether, because that is something we won't be able to do. But it's more about being smart about packaging and about creating solutions that will address our need for sustainability and basically cater for the need for environmental friendly approaches. And there are things like under packaging, which will have a negative environmental impact, as 90% of the goods that will be shipped will actually arrive broken and need to be replaced. And on the other side, you naturally have over packaging, where you create through the packaging additional waste. So I thought it was very important to bring that point up, as it was a point that I discussed quite a lot with our customers, but also a point that was raised in another context. Finally, before going to the speakers, one thing I wanted to bring up is how important it is in circularity to think about ecosystems, and not think about single companies, but think about the broader systemic change that we're going through, and that not one single company will be able to solve the problem by themselves. So in many of our projects that we have been doing, we have been working on understanding what are the ecosystems that are needed, who are the different players in the ecosystem, and how are they actually playing together in the ecosystem to make sure that we address the challenge we have with the climate emergency, with the need to be more sustainable when it comes to utilization of raw materials, and so on and so forth. So it's very important to work together across the different areas and across the different parts of the organization, but even more important, to work across an ecosystem of partners that bring together all the different aspects. And it's not only about recycling at the end of the day, but it's a much broader concept that we're thinking about, from developing new solutions, bringing new solutions to the market, and then to operating these solutions to basically maximize the impact that we're having at the end of the day. So that is why we chose the topic today. That is why we chose the speakers today. And as mentioned, we have a very broad spectrum of speakers, from Picnic, basically a user of takeaway packaging, Stora, Enso, and Huhtamaki as companies that are basically providing packaging solutions and that are spearheads of providing sustainable packaging solutions, and Kamupak, providing an alternative to the packaging, which is applicable in specific areas as well, and which should be explored. So I'm looking forward to hear from our speakers. And I'm also looking forward to hear from all of you. So as I mentioned, we will have now 10 minutes roughly for each of the speakers. I told the speakers earlier I won't jump in if they need a couple of minutes more, but I might jump in when they hit the 30-minute mark. That will be followed by a short Q&A. So if you have questions already during the presentations, please feel free to actually type them into the Q&A tab. And with that, we will basically then move through the different aspects and hopefully get a little bit smarter about the topic and get inspired to develop new solutions and new approaches to packaging together. With that, I would like to hand over to Petteri, CEO of Picnic, to talk a little bit about his experience and the experience of Picnic in the space of packaging, and specifically the area of sustainable and circular packaging. Petteri, over to you.
Thanks very much, Michael. Hi, everybody. Glad to be present here. Thanks for the invite. I just realized that I'm actually the one paying for this, because I'm the customer to probably all of these other presenters in the panel. So serves the purpose to have a say in this session. So thanks very much for the invite. I'm going to share my screen with hopefully success with the topic of go sustainable or go home. Because when I started discussing this item internally regarding circular packaging, pretty easily we ended up with the conclusion that for us this is not a project, it's one of our values. Actually, one of our values is to believe in good, which carries the sustainability aspect in it as well. And I just want to take you through our restaurant industry's point of view to the whole packaging discussion, because it's twofold. twofold issue in a sense, because at the same time, hold on just a second, at the same time, as we all know, the household packaging waste doubles every 4 years. So we do have a drastic issue in our hands, and in a sense, we are one of the causes to this, because we are serving customers with packaging, and obviously you need to find a way to get rid of that on a sustainable basis. But then from a business point of view, it's really interesting that our takeaway sales is growing by 30%, which causes a nice dilemma. How do you ensure that you utilize circular packaging? How do you make sure that you use all recycling options possible and utilize sustainable materials while still addressing the consumer need of asking for more and more takeaway products? And for us, as a small player, we operate 40 restaurants in Finland under the Picnic name. We're talking about 3 million packages roughly a year, which to us is becoming one of the most critical or most significant touch points with our consumers in terms of building our brand equity. And this is one of the contact points that consumers use to create the equity in their hearts and minds of us. And obviously, this is something that has lots of elements to it. It's all about what is the material that we're using, and obviously what's the product inside the packaging, needless to say, but then also in terms of visuality and building the brand attributes that we want to build in the consumers' hearts and mind. Now, how do we integrate these two while still ensuring that we are able to increase the brand equity and build it towards the direction that we want to? We've selected a two-tier strategy to cope with this. And the first phase of it is a decision that we made roughly a year and a half ago, that we wanted to take a stance and we wanted to truly make a difference. And we decided to change all of our packaging to a biodegradable material. And this is done. So all of our packaging now is out of biodegradable material. We still have some new visuals coming into the packaging, but we are already living this part of the strategy true. Now, probably the more interesting side of the strategy for us is to utilize reusable packaging as fast and as much as possible. One really good example of this is the Kamupak cooperation that you'll hear more about later on today in this seminar, but we're super excited about this fact and the whole realization of the fact that you can treat this as the recyclable bottles that everybody knows in Finland and are accustomed to use. When we're getting more and more consumers to use Kamupak, this will truly represent a new kind of way to operating with packaging, and slowly but surely it will make the ones of, even no matter if it's biodegradable or other sustainable material, but takeaway materials will become obsolete once we go forward in this part of the strategy. But having said that, we don't see this as being black and white. We do see both of these parts living in the future, because obviously we do have situations where it's simply not feasible to utilize the circular packaging, where you just need to take something and you need to be able to get rid of it without recycling the circular packaging later on. Another good example is our partner Kaffaroasteri, which provides all of our coffee that we sell in our restaurants. We're moving towards a recycled packaging there in terms of this barrel shape, where we utilize the same material again and again to ensure that we get the coffee beans that we grind in our restaurants for the consumer, and then utilize that packaging there as well. So this is the way that we've tried to tackle this issue with creating more waste, but still having the increasing amount of takeaway sales coming towards us all the time. Now, maybe a few self-evident items to you but for us, these are sort of big issues that we tend to spend quite a lot of time on. Why is it that everybody is not acting the same? What are the barriers in implementing similar strategies widely? And I think it's the lack of will. It's simply complacency. Everybody realizes this issue, but people are, for one reason or another, are not acting on it. So I don't have a solution why this is or what would be the way to boost it, other than talking about it as much as possible wherever we can, and ensure that people start raising the issue the same way, and start realizing that sustainability is not a choice anymore. It's not optional. You've all probably seen Cowspiracy and Seaspiracy, and there's nothing new about that. It's sort of old news already to many of you, but for our industry, this is a huge transformation happening, because it might well be that we're facing difficult or different or big challenges in terms of what are we able to put into our products in the future. Are we able to find a way to stand behind sustainable fish or seafood? Avocados is a good example. I'm proud to say that our avocados are as sustainable as they can be. We only use the natural water fills on the hills to grow the avocados that we buy. The whole transportation and the logistic is as sustainable as it can be. But if we're truly honest to ourselves, no avocado is sustainable, because people don't have enough drinking water in the areas where we grow avocados. And just an interesting fact, there's one time a year that you can get the yearly amount of avocado, but still everybody keeps selling avocado year round. So you can just imagine that if it doesn't grow all the time everywhere, how on earth are we able to do that? And that's obviously something that we need to address in the future as well. And to leave you with one good example of somebody who has really taken a stance, 11 Madison Park announced, it's a 3 Michelin star restaurant, announced that when they're opening after COVID, they will adopt a totally plant-based menu, a 3 Michelin star restaurant. So again, the old truth of a principle being a principle, the day it costs you money. This is a good example that you can do it if you don't take the complacency route to it. So to kick off, give you a few ideas, maybe that's what I wanted to tell you or say.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Petteri. So just as a reminder, if you have questions, there is a Q&A tab that you have on your screen that you can actually use to type in your questions that you have. One question I have, Petteri, because I mean, specifically in your industry, a lot of the things are consumer driven, customer driven. So you need the adoption, you need the demand, but also the acceptance from the customers. How do you see that demand? Has that changed? Is that something that your customers are asking for? How do you see that at the moment, but also then developing in the future?
Well, sustainability is sort of a hygienic factor in our industry. You need to be in it. You need to live by those rules in order to play the game. You are not surviving if you're not adopting it. So sustainable packaging and trying to increase the amount of sustainability actions in all of your operations is something that everybody are doing. Some are doing more, some are doing less, but everybody are doing it already, because it is something that you just need to do. But then at the same time, if you just think about the fact that we as consumers are using takeaway food all the time, and we are using fast food, and we are buying products that come with packaging, then we need to turn to ourselves and ask, what can we do also as consumers to bounce off or sort of counterbalance the actions that we have. So yes, consumers are demanding it, but not by so many words, because people assume that it's sort of a hygienic factor already.
And a follow-up question from Minna: did you study consumers' expectations? Is even biodegradable plastic a no-no from a consumer point of view?
Yes and no. We are a small company, so the amount of research that we're able to do is not as extensive that we would want to. But obviously, when taking a decision to going into biodegradable and looking into other options, we did find that resonated with the consumers, both because it is something that people understand and sort of nod on, that it is a good path. But I think equally important is the fact that our message towards the consumer is now simple, because we're telling that all of our packaging is biodegradable, therefore it's easy for you to utilize, and people understand that. So when you think about marketing and communication, simplicity is still the way that people like us, especially me, who is a simple person, I need simple messages to understand what you're telling me. So I think it's a good point of view to keep in mind that it is simple. It doesn't really matter which sustainable route you take, as long as you make sure that everything follows the same suit and it is simplified and told to the consumer in a simple fashion.
Interesting. There's a question from Mona. What are the cornerstones for functional logistics for reusable packaging? When does it work? When does it not work? I guess specifically if things are transported over long distances, it doesn't necessarily make sense to bring the packaging back there and then back and forth. Any experiences there?
If I think from our point of view, what are the cornerstones of a good packaging? Obviously, you need to ensure that the flavors are there, the temperatures are there, and the sort of tidiness is there. But you need to keep in mind that picnic is a fast casual chain, and we design our products to travel. So all of our products are designed from the point of view that they will be traveling. So to us, it's sort of a self-evident item that they will be in a packaging. Of course, we do serve consumers in our restaurants as well, and there we use plates, obviously, but all of our products are designed to travel. So to us, it's something that, again, it's in DNA of our product and our design that they utilize the packaging in the best possible way. But pizza is a good example. If you order a pizza and it's not warm and it doesn't have any flavor and it's mushy, nobody likes it. So if I would have a pizza joint in our group, then those would be the criteria that I would look for.
Perfect. There's one maybe final question, and then we'll let you go. Do you try to impact the end of life of your packaging? What happens to the packaging when it leaves your restaurant, your shop, as a takeaway product? And how well can you recycle the packaging containing grease, food, oil in your shops and cafeterias?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The only thing we do in order to impact the sort of consumer behavior in that part is messaging that we give in the packaging. We can only say what you can or can't do with the packaging and how we would recommend that you utilize that. But then it's up to the consumer, obviously, what they do, and it's up to the cities in how do they arrange the different recycling opportunities in parks, etc. So there's only so much we can do, and no, we don't do anything more than communicate about how important it is to recycle the packaging as it's supposed to. Kamupak, again, is a good example of another route that we're taking, that there, once we get the penetration and get more operators into the Kamupak system, and you can actually buy a product from us and leave it in a supermarket on your next grocery store route, then we're starting to talk about a real recycled circular packaging that truly makes a difference. But I don't want to steal everything from Karri's presentation. So.
Yeah, we'll come back to that later. Thanks a lot, Petteri, for joining us, for the great presentation and the opening. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Very good. So next we will move on to Maria from Stora Enso, who will be talking about how Stora Enso is basically addressing the topic of packaging, of sustainable packaging, of circular packaging, as he is a business lead in the circular economy space. So Maria, please.
Thank you, Michael. I hope you both see my screen and hear me well.
Yes, we do.
Excellent. So good afternoon, everyone, also on my behalf. I'm Maria Holopainen, and I'm responsible for our circular solutions, particularly in food service area. So we as a renewable materials company promise that everything that's made from fossil-based materials today can be made from a tree tomorrow. And that is something that Stora Enso is reaching every day with its 23,000 employees. We have sales in 50 countries across the globe, and majority of that comes from Europe, where also most of our employees are coming from. What comes to Finland, where I'm personally located, we are the largest employer here in terms of Stora Enso staff, with about 6,000 employees. So Stora Enso is, besides providing packaging materials and solutions, we are also known as a paper and a pulp producer. And besides that, we have products for wood construction and also significant forest assets. And that takes us to the foundation of our business, which is the forest. So in terms of forest, the forest assets, they enable sustainable and long-lasting business for us. And we ensure that the forests, they grow more than they are being harvested. And also that biodiversity is being promoted as part of everyday sustainable forest management practice. So what comes to combating climate change, young forests, they observe carbon when they grow, and when the old forests then release the carbon when they decay. So that carbon is being stored in wood-based products. And when we look at our raw material wood, it all comes from sustainable sources. So we have full traceability and transparency across our supply chain. So what comes to our responsible forest and plantation management, so we take all the three aspects of sustainability into account: economic, social, and environmental. And then, of course, when we look at the certification, so 78% of the wood we use is certified, and 98% of the lands we own are covered by forest certification as well. So what comes to solving sustainability challenges, that is something that we as packaging material provider, so we help by offering both virgin and recycled fibers for that end use, depending on, of course, what are the packaging requirements. So we address the needs of eco-conscious consumers, and we help our customers to solve their sustainability challenges by replacing fossil-based materials with low-carbon, renewable, and recyclable materials, namely in food and beverage end uses, but also in transportation, and, for example, pharmaceuticals. So we help our customers to find the best materials for their use. And today, quite many are looking for alternatives to replace plastics. So according to the material economic study, 25% of plastics packaging today can be replaced. And naturally, we as renewable materials company, we look alternatives that rely on fiber-based packaging. So we can provide solutions for bottles, for caps, also to look into different kind of boxes, and then look at trays and similar solutions, and of course cups and clamshells when they are needed. So when we think about consumer packaging, of course safety is something that you can't compromise, and that is also our top priority. Both the consumer safety, but also like safety across the value chain. We need to have materials that perform in each and every step. So here we have a few examples that have been delivered for this need. So our strong and premium materials that can, for example, replace a plastic strawberry box, or then new barrier applications for cups that enable full fiber recovery. And then also materials for cosmetics to look into like traditional plastic tube in a new way. So what we can say is that our products are circular by nature. So 85% is the current recycling rate for paper and board in Europe. And how we then make sure that our products are circular? Of course, they start from the woods, from the forest. So we have renewable raw material. Then when we manufacture packaging materials out of that, we look into circular design. So we have circular design guidelines that respect both the market-specific requirements. They follow what is happening in the regulatory field, also what are the requests coming from our customers, and then the overall industry guidelines. So this way, we want to make sure that our products are recyclable, and we can use recyclability tests for that, for example, PTS. And also, we want to make sure that the material gets access to collection and sorting, and then also that the recyclers are willing to take the material for recycling. In those cases, when compostability is the preferred option, then of course that is something to look into as well. So here I have a few examples what comes to creating value from recycling. What comes to recycling liquid packaging board, we are already doing that in Finland at our Varkaus mill, and we are currently also looking into opportunities to take similar actions in Poland what comes to Ostrołęka. Today, Ostrołęka is using paper for recycling, PFR, mainly for corrugated board production. Then, of course, what comes to recycling the more demanding packaging, for example, coming from a food service area. So there we have readiness to recycle used paper cups, for example, for magazine paper production at our Langebrugge mill in Belgium. So these are two examples where we can provide an in-house solution for consumer packaging that for some is considered difficult to recycle. For us, it's more a matter of getting the material collected, sorted, and then we take care of the recycling. And that is also something that is very typical for recycling paper cups. So we have a sustainable material in place, we know that recycling reduces the already very low carbon footprint by more than half. The only thing we need to get in place is to get collection, which is the key. And for that, we need collaboration across the value chain, together with our customers, their customers, consumers, and then other needed partners, such as municipalities and waste management companies. So we need to do this work together, and we are ready to be there to drive the value chain collaboration. And then why are we doing all this? Besides that we have the renewable materials, we also know that they are the right choice for the future. So already today, our business is considered as net contributor what comes to preventing global warming. So not many companies of our size can say that they are climate positive. And majority of our value in that field comes actually through our products, that they provide an alternative to replace fossil-based materials. So, for example, Eco Fish Box, which has been adopted mainly in the Nordics, can offer up to 30% of carbon footprint reduction compared to the traditional polystyrene fish box. And that equals to the carbon emissions of 76,000 cars. We know that what comes to liquid packaging, so the typical milk cartons, juice cartons, so they have 45% lower carbon footprint what comes to PET bottles, for example. And then when we have looked at a single-use paper-based system in a quick service restaurant across the Europe, in comparison to theoretical multi-use system, we have found that the climate emissions, CO2 emissions, are significantly higher with the multi-use system, as well as is the freshwater consumption. I will leave this more in detail to Richard, so he will touch it more, and let's continue the discussion when it's time for that. So what we can say is that we believe that with the help of renewable and recyclable packaging material, we can combat climate warming. So we want to see a packaging material portfolio that is carbon neutral, that comes from 100% renewable sources, and it's also sustainably sourced. Besides being recyclable, we also want to see it being recycled, not just in theory, but also in practice. And for that work, I will invite you all to join us so that we will also make it happen. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Maya. Really interesting presentation, and I'll use the privilege of the facilitator to ask the first question. We've come a long way. I think in more and more places you see these type of packaging used compared to the traditional packaging, if we want to call it that way. But from your point of view, what are what's needed to accelerate that change? What's basically the roadblocks that are there at the moment that's basically keeping companies, keeping people away from adopting this new packaging?
I would say resistance for change. So it's both like a technological issue, but it's also financial issue. So if we are looking at the packaging requirements, that is of course something that everyone wants to stick to. So you want to you know those moments that you've gone to a coffee shop and gotten a latte with you, and then the next day you still find like leftovers in that cup on your table. So the package needs to perform. And if we kind of stick to that, that we want the latte, the leftovers, like be in the cup and not to get it spill over on your table or like ruining your car. So if we want to stick to that, then also the new materials, they need to be able to deliver the same that we have gotten used to like before. And that may not always be possible from technological point of view. So we might need to come down a bit in our requirements. And also then it's a lot of pressure for us consumers, so that then we understand that we can't keep that latte in the cup for 2 days, because the cup is not meant for that. And then of course, like what comes from the cost point of view, when we talk about new solutions, we may not have them in those quantities that we are used to have the previous materials. So we need to invest in both like scaling up the technologies, running the trials, making sure that they are as safe as those materials that we've loved before. And all that, it requires time and investment, money, and also like knowledgeable, skillful resources. So it's kind of and those are just two aspects to mention. So we need to just like allow us to have the paradigm shift in our thinking, in our way of doing. But also I think it requires a lot from us consumers, that then we do our share, we contribute. But of course we can't do that if the sort of the society doesn't help us to do the right thing. So we need to have the recycling infrastructure in place, enough separate collection for different materials, and preferably, at least in Europe, to have a harmonized collection across the Europe, across the different countries. So today we have 27 different approaches, and even within one country, you can have a different rules and regulations how to just sort your waste. So there are many things that we need to be open for changing it. And that takes time to get that understanding across the value chain and everyone on board.
Absolutely. Quick reminder, you can type your questions into the chat and into the Q&A. I forgot to mention that before. I was so eager to ask my question. But I fully agree, and it's something we realized in several of our projects, exactly this ecosystem thinking, that it takes basically very many different players to work together to make this work. I think that was a very, very good point in your presentation. I guess you answered all the questions with your very good presentation already. There are no questions at the moment. Thanks a lot, Maya, for the good presentation. And I guess with that, we can then move on to the next presenter. Wait a second, quickly sharing my screen. So to the next presenter, Richard from Huhtamaki, as Maya already mentioned him earlier. He's the VP of Public Affairs, and he will be talking about how Huhtamaki is actually approaching the topic of sustainable packaging, specifically in the context of the increasing demand for hygiene, safety, and so on. Richard, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you to you and Taival for inviting me to speak this afternoon. Hello, everyone. I am hoping that is now going to be appearing on.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Good, fantastic, it's there. As Michael said, my name is Richard Alley. I am VP for Public Affairs at Huhtamaki. It wasn't that long ago that I was Director for Sustainability at Huhtamaki, so you will see how my presentation hopefully brings all those aspects together. The first thing to say, of course, is Huhtamaki's purpose. We absolutely believe in three things: protecting food, we're in food packaging; protecting people, we're in food packaging; and of course, protecting the planet. And round all of that, it's about enabling well-being and convenience for people around the world. As you'll see here, Huhtamaki is a food packaging company. We broadly serve our customers who are involved in food on the go, whether that is food delivery, whether it's quick service restaurants, or indeed food on the shelf, which is generally the groceries that you all purchase from retailers, whether they're big supermarkets or whether they are small corner shops. We produce a range of packaging for convenience, for food availability, all, however, and I think Maria said this, food safety is absolutely non-negotiable for us. It is absolutely key. We use a variety of technologies. We use paperboard conversion, so making things like paper cups, for example. We take paperboard, we shape it, we glue it, we make a product. We produce molded fiber items, so things like, and you can see in the picture there, eggs in egg boxes. And we also produce products from plastic, flexible plastic pouches, for example. Now, these are extremely lightweight, and most of the research, if not all of the research around the world, shows that flexible plastic packaging can have a beneficial impact on carbon, on the carbon footprint of food systems versus some of the much heavier alternatives. Huhtamaki itself is a global company. Our net sales are around 3.3 billion euro. We have some 81 manufacturing units and operate in 36 countries around the world. Our employees are over 18,000, and we hope to be touching 19,000 in the not too distant future. Now, I think Michael said it. I wanted to talk today very much about food systems. Demand for food is increasing. Absolutely. Globally, we are facing an ever increasing population, and our food systems have already had a large impact on the environment. To put it in some numbers, 9 billion people will live on this planet by 2050. 135 million people already suffer from acute hunger. 25% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from the food systems, but a third of all that food is wasted, which represents about 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions coming from food waste, food that just isn't eaten. Packaging, of course, can help. Firstly, it keeps food safe from spoilage. It preserves its original properties. It delivers hygiene and safety, and that prevents the spread of cross-contamination and disease. And in fact, the European Environment Agency recently said that packaging, single-use packaging, helped prevent the spread of the coronavirus. Packaging also delivers food availability. It allows food to be transported, not just within countries, but across the world. And of course, it keeps food in that edible condition, the quality condition that we all want to see it. Now, I've put two pictures here just to make people think, because often everyone goes, oh, packaging, it's optional, isn't it? No, it's not. The picture on the left-hand side of your screen, you will see the Berlin airlift. Can you imagine the Berlin airlift taking place without food packaging? And of course, it's not just the Berlin airlift, it's crises and food crises the world over where packaging is used to support people. On the right-hand side of my screen, you can see a city. built of concrete, built of brick, housing many millions of people. Imagine no packaging, no food packaging. And of course, imagine no food packaging during the coronavirus pandemic, if our industry had actually stopped working. And Michael said it earlier, the debate actually shouldn't be about more or less. It should be about smarter, about better, and about more sustainable. Now, what Huhtamaki does in our product pipeline, we operate a straightforward system. We have a series of 2030 ambitions. So by 2030, 100% of our products will be designed to be recyclable, compostable, or reusable. We want to use 100% renewable electricity in our operations to make ourselves carbon neutral in our operations, and also we are signing up to the science-based emission targets. 100% of our fiber by 2030 will be from either recycled or certified sources. And of course, over 80% of our materials will be from renewable or recycled raw material. So we put those through a product pipeline as we're designing our new products. And just to give you 3 examples. The first example is a technology platform we call Blue Loop. We use that in our flexibles plastic business, and that Blue Loop technology is all focused on making flexible plastic recyclable. The second second example is fiber lids. So as you will imagine on a coffee cup, one of the big components actually of an LCA on a coffee cup is not the paper cup, it's the plastic lid. So what we've done is we have used pretty impressive innovation to produce a fiber lid. The third area that I really wanted to talk about was a container that we call Fresh. This has been produced from molded fiber. We produced this container to replace the black PET containers, the trays that are used in ready meals. Now, other people have said this, and it's absolutely the case. We need to innovate, but real innovation requires 3 things. Firstly, we need to think in terms of the life cycle thinking. We want to achieve the best environmental, social, and economic outcome. Sustainability has 3 pillars. It's not just about the environment, it is about making sure we balance those 3 to deliver on our sustainability priorities and avoid those unintended consequences. Now, how we get to innovation is quite complex. First of all, we think we need better regulation to avoid unintended consequences. Sometimes, and there are plenty of examples of this around the world, we start off with a piece of regulation which people believe will deliver better. But actually, in practice, it ends up delivering worse. So what we need, and what we're calling for, along with much of the industry, is that we think legislation should support innovation through enabling legislative frameworks and not through simplistic bans or taxes that actually can result in unintended consequences. And the third approach that we really want is a systems approach, that we assess the system, we assess the whole circularity system, not just a small portion, and you'll see in a second, which is only the use phase. And that brings me to what Maria mentioned earlier, which was a very large life cycle assessment conducted to ISO standards and independently reviewed. It was produced by Ramboll, Now, what this LCA did, it compared paper-based single-use tableware with plastic multi-use tableware. The aim of this was really to see, firstly, where the hotspots in those manufacturing, in those use systems actually are, and secondly, to provide policymakers with some up-to-date evidence. Now, on the left-hand side in green, you can see where the hotspot for carbon sits within the paper-based single-use tableware system. It's absolutely at the manufacturing stage. As you will imagine, in usage, you drink your cup of coffee, that's it. You've used it, but the carbon footprint is all at the manufacturing stage. Propylene multi-use tableware system, actually, at manufacturing stage, because you've got multi-use, you end up with a lower carbon footprint at that point. However, food hygiene is absolutely paramount. It is non-negotiable. And when you wash to remove the germs, to remove the contamination, unsurprisingly, you use two things plus detergent. You use energy and you use water, fresh water, to enable that to be cleaned properly. And actually, what this piece of research showed, that 83% of the impact in carbon terms of a polypropylene multi-use tableware system sits at the usage stage. So you can see from this that actually, over the course of a year, the plastic multi-use tableware system used 2.5 times more energy than the single-use system. Many people found that quite surprising, but it's not when you think about things in a systemic approach. The other thing I would say, and this is probably not a major issue within Northern Europe, it is absolutely an issue in Southern Europe, is that the multi-use tableware system over the course of that year uses 3.7 more times fresh water. And as I say, that is a bigger issue in Southern Europe. So how do we see the future? Firstly, we see there to be a focus on materials, on fiber, wood fiber, on renewables, on recycled product. We want to see structures that are simplified, which design for circularity and can be recycled more simply, more easily through infrastructure. Ultimately, we want to see lower carbon impacts for the food chain, but also to prevent food waste. Secondly, we do see absolutely a role for extended producer responsibility to invest in improved recycling systems. We want to see recycling systems, waste management systems that are fit for the 21st century. And finally, we want evidence-based policymaking, scientific fact with better regulation to identify at an early stage and avoid unintended consequences. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Richard. Really interesting presentation. Again, if you have questions, there's the Q&A tab. If you don't find it, just put it into the chat tab. We will pick it up also from there. And I see there's already the first question. How does Richard see the status of recycling fiber-based packaging products across the world? Because recycling infrastructure differs country by country. How does the company contribute to filling this gap?
So absolutely, and I'm not sure who asked the question, but yes, it completely varies across the globe. Recycling paper products is not difficult. I think, as Maria said, the issue there is often the collection. So if you can collect your fiber-based package, or indeed your plastic packaging, and you can put it through the system, it can be recycled. Huhtamaki works with others to improve the collection and infrastructure systems. So for example, in Europe, we are members of an organization called Forever Green. Forever Green's aim is to improve yet more the circularity of fiber-based packaging. And Forever Green looks at both, it looks at innovation, it looks at the technologies required, it looks at collection, it looks at sorting, and how basically we can get more fiber-based packaging going into the infrastructure, and also where we need improvements to the infrastructure. I mean, I think I said in my presentation, we want to see a waste management system that is fit for the 21st century. We don't believe that the waste management systems designed in the 1980s and designed in the 1990s should suddenly be covered in some Soviets type of aspic, and we say, that's how it was, that's how it will be. No, we think we need to work together as a collaborative value chain and improve circularity in that way. And I think others quite clearly support that. I mean, Forever Green continues to grow in the number of members. You're on mute, Michael.
Yeah, sorry about that. I tried to be quiet in the background. So there's another question about the comparison you had between single-use and plastic tableware. What about normal ceramic tableware and glass? Does the same apply? That
yes.
Washing of these items grows the footprint bigger than single-use?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And the study that Ramboll conducted was, and I should say this, it was done for QSR high volume restaurants. So you know, the burger joints, etc. It was done within those stores, and it was eat and drink in. This was not about takeaway. It was about in-store, a closed environment. But within that closed environment, the baseline used polypropylene, which is a good plastic. I mean, let's not beat about the bush. It produces a quality product. But the issue on ceramics, and by the way, in some stores, high volume stores, you would not use ceramics or glass for safety reasons, for public safety reasons. But yes, they did a baseline comparison. This was a very large LCA. They did a baseline comparison using polypropylene, and they did other comparisons using what you might call traditional tableware. So a mixture of glass, a mixture of steel for cutlery, and a mixture of ceramic, traditional ceramic. And within those operations, energy used in dishwashing, and this was a European average. Okay, so you know, there are certain countries in Europe that have a much, much, much higher carbon footprint given their energy characteristics, some with lower. But absolutely, the same applies to those materials because you are having to dishwash to get the sanitization correct. And that is non-negotiable.
Perfect. Maybe the last question, and then we move on to the next presenter. How do you judge alternative fibers? And Claudia mentions here grass and sylphy compared to wood with regards to sustainability. Is that something Huhtamaki is looking into?
So as it happens, we make one of our egg box range from grass. And we produce, or we have produced for us, especially in the Far East, so in China, bagasse, of course, which is sugar cane fiber, is used. The choice of fiber often depends on the location where you actually are. But of course, you can run LCAs in exactly the same way to determine where you get to. The interesting thing, I think, with alternative fibers is not only at a production side, so how are those fibers produced, but also in terms of where the consumers are, because you would not transport raw sugarcane bagasse from Southern Africa, from South America, or from Southeast Asia, and I used to work in the sugar industry, you would not transport that to Europe for manufacture in Europe, for example. The other issue, of course, is what is the post-consumer use. So there are, of course, implications from putting some alternative fibers into a wood fiber processing unit. So we just have to be careful with those. But again, if you apply life cycle thinking, you can go through all those stages, and you identify the positives, and there are always positives. I mean, for all materials there are positives, but you also identify the negatives, or should I say also the unintended consequences, because I think if that full assessment, you actually arrive at better decisions. And I think what everybody wants to achieve is a better decision, a better overall environmental, social, and economic outcome.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Richard, for the presentation, for taking the questions. We'll move on to the next presenter. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Perfect. So let's move on. So the next presenter will be Karri from Kamupak. Kamupak is providing I would say an alternative packaging solution, a reusable packaging solution. Karri is one of the co-founders, and he's basically looking at process development and the financials. Karri, the stage is yours.
Thank you. I'll start sharing. Okay. So here we go. So I'm Karri Lehtonen from Kamupak.
Sorry, if you go to presentation mode, then. If you just, I think alusta is the, if you.
Oh, yeah.
Alusta, yeah.
Is it?
Not yet. Okay,
well, I can.
let's just go ahead. That's fine.
Okay, I see it. So let's see. So I'm Karri Lehtonen from Kamupak, and what Kamupak is doing is solving the current waste crisis that is basically caused by single use in a lot of contexts, and we have created a digital deposit system that incentivizes for reuse and material cycles. And loads of trends going in circularity and single use. The need for packaging is ever increasing. Takeaway eating has increased tremendously because of this current situation, where in certain restaurants that are trying to answer these questions. Overall, I would imagine that there are some restaurants that take quite heavy toll as well, but where takeaway is increasing, it's increasing rapidly, as well as e-commerce, which creates a need for increased packaging. So there are a lot of factors taking place at the moment, and of course, simultaneously we see rising consumer interest for sustainable packaging, because everybody is seeing their waste being getting fully loaded, basically. And it's not only me, I see it everywhere I go, basically, in the city and wherever. But nonetheless, there are environmental concerns that needs to be answered. Plastic pollution, we need to reduce and get rid of that. It's causing a lot of challenges to biodiversity. Climate change, resource scarcity, these are all related topics when it comes to single use. And in the same time, in the meanwhile, we see that the regulators have taken this challenge on their to-do list, and there are step-by-step restrictions coming to that. And must say I agree with previous players that it's a systemic approach that needs to be understood when making the decisions eventually.
Karri, sorry to interrupt. We can only see your first page at the moment if you're changing the slide. Now it jumped to slide number 3.
Maybe I just share my whole screen.
Yeah, if you do that, that might be the easiest. Yeah, good, perfect.
Can you see it? Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, let's move on. Oh, how is Kamupak about to solve the problem? Well, first of all, we've started from cutting down packaging waste, enabling zero waste alternative for takeaway, and we offer a digital deposit system that creates an incentive for the users to return the packages and products. And for this far, we've been experimenting in Finland, mainly in Helsinki area, in takeaway context. And our customers are restaurants, home delivery companies, and retail stores. And the system, it's built in mind to enable scaling to any packaging or products altogether. And what we are doing is we are tracing where the packages are going. This gives us understanding on the stock levels at each location, and also enables us to balance the deposit when there's a customer claiming for deposit. So we enable for the user to use it at any location to redeem a new product. But this also enables us to have a control over the logistics of the packaging eventually. This far, we've been using a polypropylene plastic in our products that, according to the user, or according to the producer, I mean, they claim that it lasts hundreds of times. We make a conservative estimate that it would last around 100 plus minus times over the life cycle. But we are also looking for bio-based materials that would be suitable for circular use. So any material that would be suitable is of our interest. But when it comes to the packaging, it's currently a standard packaging that is easy to use and wash. Simple design, no external parts. Cover needs to be transparent to show the portion. It's rectangular shape, which enables certain level of logistical efficiency. Shallow, which enables also a nice dining experience. It's hygiene, easy to wash and usage, and handles well in industrial washing. These are the main characters that needs to be met. And as we are controlling the material streams and product streams over the life cycle, this enables us to actually do checks and also to return the materials to the producer that can then substitute the materials in their production when they are making new products, not necessarily our packages, but new products. And of course, we are expanding to our product line, finding new needs and trying to answer those. And this far, we've recognized that ecosystem is something that needs to be put in place to be able to scale to new application areas. Currently, we utilize Kamupak application, which is basically taking care of the returns and claiming of the deposits altogether. User scans the product with the Kamupak, and then when he's paying, and then when he returns, if we know whose it is, and then we can return the deposit basically. Currently, we are collaborating with Picnic, which was mentioned before, Sushi Bar and Wine, Helsinki University Hospital, and Vault, and we've had some collaboration with K-Supermarkets here in Helsinki. Some package reuse insights that we can give at this stage. We've been able to replace about 30 to 50% of single-use takeaway packages in locations where our systems are in use. The return rates have been around 93.5% when we count for weeks due times. We also see packages returning to the system later than that as well. And this was the latest loop period. It was 8.7 days for the package to get returned, but keep in mind that this actually was calculated over the restaurant restriction period as well. So there's a bit of a data correction possibly getting on the way when we head to the summer. But yeah, I would like to challenge some of the representations here as when it comes to reuse of the packages themselves. I've read the Remble lifecycle assessment, and I've recognized the main flaws in that. We could go that in discussion later on, but overall, over 100 uses, the Kamupak full lifecycle is actually comparable or very competitive as compared to single-use plastics. One needs to count a pile of 100 boxes to kind of match one Kamupak in that context. And given that it's one package can save up to 5 to 8 kilograms less municipal waste over lifetime. So that's also a remarkable point to make here. And we've done actually a lot of life cycle assessments based on our system. This, what I'm showing here, is actually done for a centralized scheme where we would collect and wash the packages. Eventually, that is a scheme where we can make choices about where we buy our electricity, how we do our transports and so forth. But as we've recognized that we are actually running a lot of restaurants that doesn't require centralized washing, we are also updating some of our life cycle assessments to better meet our distributed washing model, where there's some other factors that needs to be taken into account, such as the network effects, where the distance between restaurants within the system needs to be counted in to kind of being able to estimate the transport needs and so forth. But how in general our system works, when there's a new customer, we add them to our system, whether it's a location, it can be a product in near future. Nonetheless, the package deposit is added to the product price. Deposit is charged when the consumer buys the product, and after the consumption, it can be returned to closest Kamupak customer location, and the deposit is then returned to the customer. And then at this stage, the packages or the items are washed and checked, and the loop goes on after that, eventually until the package comes to the end of the life cycle, when it's returned to the producer. And there are some control points that we are adding to the system to make sure that the packages will get out of the system and returned eventually. Then I could shortly discuss about our digital deposit platform. What a deposit system brings to reuse and recycling is that we add value through customer loyalty. People return to the location where they bought the package eventually. Also, there's quite a lot of time savings in processing the material streams and data. These are something that we automate in our back end. We can extend the lifetime of products over the quality and control checks, so that we don't take them away too early or too late. Then, of course, this online status of the stock levels at each location gives us possibilities to adjust and optimize the logistics accordingly. And of course, we know where the stuff is going, so this gives possibilities to assets management in general. And of course, once we can return the materials back to the user, back to the producer, then this enables to conserve the value in the materials at the end of the life cycle. And this is something I would imagine that would interest also other package producers in this discussion. But also the deposit platform enables for all kind of new business models, combining rentals and deposits. And once we are running it on our own platform, it also enables reduced transaction cost for the model altogether. So it's the prices with our reuse scheme are actually quite comparable with single-use solutions. When it comes to the, well, one of the actually greatest benefits in digital deposit platform is the data that we get. We get the location data, we get understanding of the transactions and ownership of the packages, and as well we can trace how many cycles the packages have gone through. But once we've been operating, we've also found out some, let's say, possibilities and ways to kind of get more value to the data that we are gathering. One is that we could add material data with the product. So when it comes to the recycling point, then actually we could recognize what material it is, and this way we would get more homogeneous streams of materials that could be then more efficiently recycled. Then all kinds of quality assurance methods that we have recognized, or ways to kind of improve further the hygiene and usability of the packages. And of course, then we can also include the product-specific life cycle data to give an oversight over the consumption within the deposit scheme. So if there are more than one product, so we can actually count the impact of all those products going through the deposit scheme to kind of give the user better insight on the impact that they are making. And yeah, I could shortly tell about the ways, because in deposit scheme there are various ways of returning the products. So currently we have used 3 of these 4 methods that we recognized here. In restaurants, the customer personnel takes the products back and validates the products. Then there's one way is that the user kind of checks out the product to a location, and the validation then can take place afterwards, so that the deposit can be returned to the product, to original user. And we've also tested with return vending machines that take care of the return and deposit validation in place, and the user will get the deposit back at that stage and can use it then to buy a new product or however she or he wants to use it. And then the fourth recognized way to transfer the ownership in a deposit scheme is through one user to another. So we can imagine, let's say, a Euro pallet where there's not possibly centralized operator for the deposit scheme. So we could also utilize transfer of ownership from one user to another user, which enables quite flexible ways to run a deposit scheme eventually. To conclude, package as a service. Digital tools enable for flexible ways to transfer the ownership of the product. We can use a wide array of technologies, QR, RFID, machine sites, whatever there is, so that we can identify the products in cycle that are going around. Then the logistical efficiency. We have a wide array of possibilities to track and trace the product flow within all of the supply chain, and also the deposit system that is a good and clear way to incentivize for returns even for low valued products. It's a easy way to validate the environmental impacts, but also we can find, let's say, customers who might need a ready-to-use deposit system for their needs. So we can tailor-made a system for these specific kind of users that can also be used for our other products. And this is one point to make, is the scalability and network benefits for a wide range of products utilizing the same platform. So it can, the same platform could be utilized to redeem, let's say, coffee cup takeaway package. Then it could be utilized for consumer goods, whatever. It's a unexplored jungle that needs to be further explored next. That's about my presentation. Here is our core team. And yeah, I would like to thank for the opportunity to be able to tell about what Kamupak is doing.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Karri. Really interesting approach, interesting model. Do you want to switch on your camera for the Q&A? I think it might have been switched off in the process. The first question is,
yes,
is about the hygiene concerns. Are there any hygiene concerns related to the reusable packaging, and how do you address those?
Well, hygiene is one of the major concerns when we started. It was one of the main concerns when we started experimenting in very limited locations, and we've been doing a lot of test washing cycles, and during these operations we've been able to trace down the potential dangers within the reuse scheme, but also to put these under control. And we, based on our learnings, we have a washing manual that we expect our collaborators to follow, basically.
Okay, cool. And then another question on the digital technology. What is the digital technology used for tracking, like big data, IoT, some other topics? How do you track the products?
All the packages that we have in cycle are marked with individual code, which enables us to see where it was bought, where it's returned, and this is the way we can follow also the cycles, but also the users, the endpoints, and so forth.
Perfect. And then I think there was a question, but I think you've already answered that. The estimate, what percentage usually is returned to the loop? I think you answered that. That was a very high number of, was it 98 or something % that are returned?
Yeah, it was 93.5% over the over our operation time, and but I think there are some boxes that could be in our storage. We need to do a bit of inventory there.
Yes. Maybe a final question from my side, Karri. I mean, you are working with some partners already, but the idea naturally is to have a much broader adoption going forward. From your point of view, what are the roadblocks, or what are the things that are hindering a wider adoption from your point? Is it capacity, or are there other reasons from your point of view?
The main restrictions, as I see it, are it's on our side. Honestly speaking, we have limited resources, so and we are receiving a lot of requests, and at the same time we are running our operations, and it's been a bit of a burden, kind of being able to put everything on pipeline and being able to deliver on time. But I think now we are getting there to be in balance, so we can start actually expanding properly. Or we've actually started with that. For example, Picnic here, who was present, has declared that they would like to expand quite fast with us. So there are some customers that we need.
Great to hear that the demand is there and that it's a positive problem of just scaling fast enough. That's good to hear. Thanks a lot, Karri, for your presentation and for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was very nice.
I think we'll move on to basically the closing part. So I would like to thank the speakers once again, and this was exactly what we had in mind, to look at the topic from very different reasons. And what we heard were different perspectives. Basically, Petteri, who was talking about the need and the strategy, how Picnic has been approaching the replacement of the traditional, the old school packaging with the newer ways of packaging. Then Maria, who has basically been talking, and also Richard been talking about how to approach these new packages, how these new packages will be created in a more sustainable way, how R&D, product development, circular design, as Maria said, it is very important. And as Richard pointed out, how important it is to have this systemic change that basically creates the framework around all of this, so that we can actually work in this very new environment where packaging is basically more in a circle than in a linear model that we had traditionally. And then Karri, who was talking about yet another alternative to that, of basically reusable packaging, and how that model could actually work with the deposit system, very similar to the system that we nowadays have around cans and bottles. And as we discussed, it for different use cases, there will be different solutions going forward as well. But one thing is for sure, packaging is here to stay. We will need packaging in all its different forms to keep food fresh, to make sure that products that are ordered are delivered in one piece and do not need to be reproduced, which will also have a negative impact on the CO2 balance. Before closing, a couple of things. We have a LinkedIn group where we are continuing discussion after this event. So if you're interested to continue the dialogue with like-minded people that are interested in circularity and sustainability, in combining that with digital means, join us over in LinkedIn. at Digitally Circular. So there we will also announce future events, and we will be talking about the topic going forward. And then we basically, as Taival, we have a white paper that you can find on our webpage on the strategic dimension of circularity, which is going more into the direction of why is circularity from a strategy point of view important for companies, as well as we have been developing a circular maturity model assessment that actually helps companies of all sizes to basically understand their circular maturity and how they can actually address and move forward, moving towards circularity. And that's independent on what the maturity is that you start with. It's basically a model that has 100 questions across the whole spectrum of the organization, and basically helps pinpointing what are the key areas that a company can actually address and work on to drive circularity in its operations, in its products, and basically across the company. Finally, remember to follow us on LinkedIn. That's where we basically will announce future events and future activities that we have around the topic. And we would be happy to welcome you also to one of our future events. With that, thanks again to our speakers. It was a great event. I learned a lot, at least. So it was great to listen to all of you. Thanks for your great presentations, your great insights, and thanks to everyone for joining us, for your good questions. Please feel free to connect in LinkedIn and to follow up with any questions you might have also after the event. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, and looking forward to see you at one of our future events. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.